Hello everybody and welcome to another video. This week we're going to do a little bit of a blast from the past for the channel and have another look at some Drukhari in the form of a really cool metal Archon and some absolutely disgusting grotesques. Let's go. First things first, our Archon. Big thanks to my friend Brapscallion for giving this to me at the end of Hobbypocalypse Season 2 last year. If you don't know what the Hobbypocalypse is, you can go to Winter's SEO's members area and find out. That sounds like an innuendo, but it's a real thing. I've also got these grotesques, essentially a metal cyberite and some fine cast models, and they're having a bit of a dance because these are party elves. Starting out with the airbrush, as always, you don't need one, but it's simple and easy to use, so I use one. I'm using Hex Lichen from Vallejo to make these guys all purple all over. This is my base colour. Everything's going to be built up from purple, and everything should have a bit of purple in the shadows. Now moving on to just the Archon, we're going to be using some Dark Sea Blue all over the mini just from above, so we're going to keep that purple in the recesses. I'm going to mix in some blue-green continuously to make it brighter and brighter, and after about 3 stages, I'm saying I'm about there with a nice bright zenithal highlight. Blue down to purple. On the grotesques, we're doing something very similar, but we're going to be using Bugman's Glow and working our way up to Cadian Flesh Tone. This gives a really nice gradient from our base coat of purple, so if you hold the model upside down, you'll see loads of purple, but from above, it will look like normal skin. It gives it that weird effect that these grotesques should have. Now back to our Archon, we're going to be using blue-green for a nice crisp edge highlight all over the armour. This is a really easy model to paint because he's mostly armour plates, but if you're doing something like witches, you'll need to use both these techniques that we've used on both the grotesques and the Archon, so there will be skin showing. This guy again though, mostly armour, so just the zenithal spray and then some highlighting. It's also worth noting that my army scheme is completely stolen, or inspired by if you like, from Lucas over at Squidmar Miniatures. He did an awesome video on painting an old Drukhari combat patrol in about 14 hours, and I ran with that scheme because I loved it so much. On the grotesques, I'm going to be doing the armour in the exact same way as the Archon, so we're going to focus on the trousers here, using Dark Sea Blue as a base and then moving up with Cabalite Green for a nice slightly different effect, whilst keeping in touch with that colour that we're going to be doing all over the armour. Next, the few metallic areas that these guys do have, I'm going to be covering with Bugman's Glow. Why is that? Because mixed with the purple, it makes a really nice coppery effect. So we're keeping that purple in the darkest areas, Bugman's Glow on top, and then our next step will be to highlight up with Cadian Flesh Tone. I'm essentially going for somewhat of a non-metallic metal here, but a very, very cartoony quick version. It does look good at the end. The final highlight is with Pale Sand, just to give a really sharp, bright glint to everything. I find on models, especially ones like this that are really small, this is a really, really cool effect. Just place your highlights carefully and in areas that the light would catch it most, and you're basically onto a winner. One quick tip for Drukhari is that if you're ever unhappy with any highlight and don't want to go back to fix it or spend hours on it, you can just add blood. These are space elves fighting people on a dance floor. At least mine are. I added a bit of Black Legion to my grotesques for those vials and stuff that we're going to come back to, and then used Evil Sun's Scarlet as the base coat for this giant flowing mane and all the tassels on my Archon. Even though it's classed as a layer paint, it does a really good job at base coating. The next highlight is going to be Wild Rider Red, followed by Lugganoth Orange to give a really nice fiery effect to this mane. This is our second spot colour, so it has to look good. Speaking of spot colours, we're now going to move on to the green, which is another one of our primaries. We're going to base coat the little knife underneath the gun and the talons on his left hand. There's a lot more green on the grotesques though, so we'll cover that in a second. Essentially all over the grotesques there are pipes, vials, orbs, fluid, glowy areas, whatever. Make them all green, or at least in this scheme. It looks really cool. There's not a huge amount of green in the army except for a few weapons here and there, so when you have the opportunity to do it all over something like this, it looks absolutely awesome. This is actually one of the longest parts of the process because there are so many little areas all over these fine cast models. Just go wild, do what you like. The next step was something I'd forgotten, and I went back and did the faceplates on these grotesques in the same colour as the Archon's armour. Once that was done, I switched to Moot Green and covered all the green areas in a nice highlight. This is where the models really start to pop, especially the grotesques, because the Archon was already absolutely dripped out in that armour. But the grotesques are really coming to life here with this nice bright highlight, and we've actually got one more step to go with the green, and that's to add livery green, which is one of my favourite greens in existence. When you're going for a neon scheme, a super bright spot colour is always advised, and this absolutely does the job. Now, quick public service announcement, this guy's lost his weapon, so we're going to be ignoring him for the next step. We're base coating all of the blades in Hex Lichen. We're going to have a nice purple effect. And whilst that dries, we're going to do all the spines in a rough coat of Ushabti bone. As I was painting these, it looked like they would be awfully painful, though the Drukhari do like that, so we'll be coming back to those with some kind of wash very shortly. I also took this time to tackle the gauntlet, highlighting it up in the exact same way as I did on the Archon's pistol. Again, we'll be coming back to those. Back to the sword, we're mixing pale grey blue with Hex Lichen, because they were both already on my palette, and adding a nice highlight onto the weapons. Back to another area, we're going to use Dawnstone all over the areas we base coated Black Legion in the past. Now finally, back to the sword, we're going to use a nice mix of more pale grey blue and Hex Lichen to make a nice edge highlight all over the weapon. It's very simple to do, but it looks smart and, more importantly, sharp. Now, as mentioned, back to those areas that I think look really raw and painful, we're going to add a nice heavy wash of Carroburg Crimson. This is a red coloured wash and will make everything look a little bit, if not bloody, then stretched, raw, maybe has a rash, I don't know, but it suits these grotesques. Now back to the gauntlet one more time with a quick coat of Agaros Dunes contrast paint. Now at this stage, we're on the home stretch with some really cool bases. I'm going to base coat everything with Hex Lichen once again, and then follow that up with some nice sharp lines with pale grey blue, or any white or grey that you have that's bright enough. This is going to give a cool synthwavy effect, like some running lines, like you'd see on some album artwork for an 80s band. Then we're going to go in with Vallejo's magenta and glaze that on top, thicker on top of the lines, and then pulling it away in a nice blur effect. I love this because it's almost quite literally blood on the dance floor, these horrible things running around in an 80s disco. And with that, that's these Drukhari complete. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I had a really good time, and I'm looking forward to putting these guys on the table. As always, I've been Sam. See you next time. Think I've got